All right, guys, so in this video, I'm going to walk you through essentially my thesis on project management for SaaS products. We've built a lot of our own SaaS products over the years, and also we work with tens of hundreds of SaaS companies. So I've seen the inside and behind the scenes of a lot of products being built, some which have gone really well, some which hasn't. And so what I'm going to do in this video, just show you the raw and honest truth. I'm going to walk through an article which actually comes from Seeking Sigma, which is essentially our documentation for how to project manage for SaaS products. And then I'm also going to show you a real life example. So I'm going to jump into Linear, which is what we use for project management. You don't need to use Linear. You could literally use Jira. You could use whatever you want. But we currently use Linear. So I'm going to walk through Linear, an actual project. I'm going to show you how we thought about the milestones. I'm going to show you the spec. I'm going to show you the different issues. I'm going to show you literally everything behind the scenes. But I wanted to just get technical first and really just walk you through our methodology, because the value in this video is understanding how we approach things, not the actual click this button, click that button, because then you can take it and run with it. Okay, so let me start with a quick introduction. First, we believe in the tried and true agile project management workflow. If you literally have looked at any SaaS company in the world, they all run on something called agile. Now, if you want to get technical, you can look at agile versus waterfall, but I genuinely just don't think it's worth it. Just jump into agile. However, we have a few unique spins and twists on it, which I think has led to us getting a lot of success where a lot of people have struggled with agile. Right, so let's look at the core building blocks, and really there's just 6 things. And if you just manage these 6 things, you should do a really, really good job of overall project management. And I'm also talking specifically to the people who are non-technical, right? Non-technical founders, I think, need to have a way tighter grasp on this than those who are technical. All right, so let's start with meaningful direction. So all work should be linked to milestones, which is downstream from projects, which is downstream from the company roadmap, which is downstream from company goals, so that everyone understands the purpose of their work. Essentially what it's saying here is everything should be connected. One of the biggest issues I see with developers in general, and even with marketing people, is they're doing a lot of work, but they don't understand the value of their work. They don't understand sort of the big picture. What is it leading to? And that's because it's very easy to jump into a project management software and just be doing tasks the whole day, and you don't actually see the much larger picture. And so what I've done here really simplifies this. Is you should start by defining goals in the company. Then you should have a singular roadmap. That's why I've said the roadmap, not many roadmaps, one roadmap for the entire company. And then on that roadmap, there should be a series of projects. And then if you dig within those projects, you'll have milestones. And then within those milestones, there should be issues or tasks. Now, Asana, which is a completely different company that we haven't spoken about yet, Asana is project management. But that's not why I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing it up because they have clearly figured out something, because they were able to take a essentially to-do list and turn it into a multi-billion-dollar company, which says something in and of itself. And so they call this the pyramid of clarity. And if you think about it, it is an inverted pyramid, because if you're running a company properly, you should have less goals than you have issues, right? If you have more goals than you have issues or tasks, I don't know how you get anything done. So really this will look like a pyramid. This will be the top of the pyramid, then you'll have the roadmap, and then there'll be one roadmap, multiple projects. There'll be more milestones than projects and more issues than milestones. So essentially it will come down like that into a pyramid. Okay, and essentially everyone should know what the top of the pyramid is, what they're aiming for, and then work their way up. And this also helps with motivation if people know why they're doing certain things. The next thing is single ownership. So every issue, and again, I'm just going to use the word issue throughout this video, but issues also refer to tasks, right? Those 2 words are interchangeable. Each issue should have a named owner responsible for owning its delivery. Of course, as a team, we want to collaborate. We want to work on problems together, but the buck should stop with one name. When tasks are assigned to multiple people, it's very easy to blame someone else and no one really take responsibility. So I believe in a task being assigned to one person, and that person owns the entire responsibility of delivering it. The next thing, which is very important, is understanding that momentum, cadence is more important than planning. So keeping team members productive is way more important than creating the perfect scopes. I've dealt with a lot of teams where they spend enormous amounts of time and energy and resources planning, and they come up with these perfect reports and these perfect scopes, but they don't actually get anything done, right? So I like to say that when the ship is moving, it's easy to course correct. It's way better to just get started and get moving and get doing things, because once you have that momentum, then you can move things around, right? Like it's easy to move a moving ship. But if a ship is stuck, right, it's very, very difficult to overpower inertia. If you think about a car, When a car is rolling down a hill, it's very easy to maneuver it. But if it's standing still, trying to get it to move requires enormous amounts of energy. The same thing here. If you are going to approach project management, I always tell founders, focus on getting momentum, not getting things perfect. So how do we get that momentum? First, I like to say that you should plan cycles weekly. So on a weekly basis, you're going to plan your cycles. There's a very big debate between 2-week cycles, 1-week cycles, or 6-week cycles. It depends on how you want to do things. I think as your team scales in size, you'd have to extend it because there's a lot more things going on. But for most startups and probably most people watching this, I think just do weekly cycles. I'm going to explain what a cycle is just now, but weekly cycles are useful because it gives you the ability and it gives you the option to plan things on a weekly basis, which just keeps that momentum moving, right? Then I think you should plan roadmaps monthly, and I think you should work on shipping one project at a time. It's way better to ship 3 significant projects than to end the roadmap with 10 half completed ones. So, there's 2 sides of the coins here. Sometimes I look at companies and they have these roadmaps with projects for features or bugs that they want to fix, but the list of projects is so long and teams are working on so many projects at the same time, nothing is getting done. And then at the end of the roadmap, there's like 50% of the work on everything completed rather than just 3 things being completed 100%. And again, this kills momentum because part of momentum is about maintaining motivation. People want to feel like they are making progress. That feeling that you get when you hit the done or the check mark on a task management software and you check off a task, that is euphoria, right? That's what drives momentum, is that feeling that, wow, I did something. That's what we're trying to create here. We're trying to do weekly planning cycles so that each week we get the opportunity to reflect on what we did, which is motivation, and plan for the following week and then commit to doing it. We're trying to plan roadmaps monthly because we want to look at the work that we've done and be able to maneuver the ship month to month. If you're trying to plan the roadmap for a year, it's very, very difficult to do that because throughout a year, so much can change. Sometimes you can start on a project or product actually in January, but by May, you're building a completely different product, right? Because you haven't found product market fit. So it's very important. And then also just working on one thing at a time, just so that you can get it done and then move on to the next thing. Okay. Now, commit and triage. This is a very important idea that I think more people really, really need to ask themselves if they're doing this properly. Once you've committed to a cycle, in other words, once you say, this is the work that I'm going to do this week, don't allow the scope of what you're going to do this week to become bloated. So in the moment, it may seem important, but if it wasn't in the initial scope, it can probably wait. So what this is basically saying is, at the beginning of the week, you say, this is what I'm going to do. But then as the week goes on, things come up. Bugs come up, ideas come up, all of these extra things come up which weren't initially in the plan. And it's very easy to abandon the original plan and just start doing all these extra things. But then very quickly you lose sight of what you're doing and you just end up, literally like whack-a-mole, just fixing things all the time. And there's a big mess. Okay, so instead, what we do is we say, create a triage list of ideas, problems, whatever. And then on a weekly basis, you can review that triage list and decide if you need to move it into this week's work. And 99% of the time, when you get the idea or when that bug shows up, it seems like you should drop everything and fix it. But when you put it in triage and you review it, days later, it usually is actually not that important. Okay, so distance from an issue improves your priority clarity because it gives your brain time to think about things. Okay. Updates should be asynchronous, so project owners should update the team on their status via weekly write-ups, and completion date should be estimated by the system. You know that you're doing something wrong if you apply this, and you have to ask your team what is happening. You have to ask them when are things going to get done. You have to ask the team what is the status. Everything should be done asynchronously. So the way you do that, weekly write-ups, which I'm going to show you just now, and then not defining completion dates, actually letting the system work it out for you based on the momentum. I'm going to show you all of that, again, real life example just now. And then just continuously update your change logs. So for users, it shows that the product is getting better. But for investors, it shows that you're making progress. And at times when you feel like things are not moving as fast as you want and it feels like everything's stuck, which happens, by the way, a lot in teams, you can look back on how much you've already achieved. So momentum is a function of just reminding the market that the company actually exists. So you might be mid-deep building something and it feels like nothing's happening, but still, even if you make small iterations, I still would add it to the changelog, regardless if anyone's reading it or not, for these reasons, right? And you'll be amazed at how much investors actually appreciate and look into a changelog when deciding if they want to invest in you. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to break down these things and just sort of talk about how I would go about structuring it, and then I'm going to give you the examples as we go. So first of all, the roadmap. As I was saying, setting direction for a company is probably the most important thing that a founder or a head of product can do. And that's because when you set a direction, it aligns everyone towards the same goals, because you literally say we are going in this direction and that is the end goal that we're trying to achieve. And what this does is it forces you to articulate your vision for the product, but also decide how you're actually going to get there. Okay. And just a quick note here, people like to feel included, and when they get more ownership. So basically make this collaborative. Don't just sit in a dark room by yourself and plan the roadmap. Okay. And then a quick note that I wanted to add here is balancing this thing between vision and feedback, because your task as a founder is to find the balance between building towards your vision, because you obviously have a vision for what you want to build. And also, if you're building a new product, the world hasn't necessarily seen it yet, and therefore it's hard for people to comment on it. But they also are at the same time asking for stuff. If you have, an MVP of people actually using it, they're asking for, can you add this? Can you add this? So it's this constant balance of, this is the direction I want to take the product. So this is what I know I need to build. But then also all of the users who, by the way, are paying for us and therefore keeping the company alive are asking for all these things. So it's this constant balance motion. And if you are too vision based, then you might completely miss the user and the market needs, right? That's the whole thing of product market fit. But if you are only user centric, which means you only build things that users want, then you end up with a Frankenstein product that literally just has no clear purpose. It's just a collection of user requests. Okay, what I would tell you here is prioritize foundational projects first, and those will have the greatest impact on customer experience, and then deprioritize the projects that don't improve the product. And a general rule, and again, we've got 10% here, but it could be 12%, 20%. This is just what I've seen work best. If your churn for your product is below 10%, I would personally prioritize revenue generating products. Again, I'm a very big believer in products need to actually make money. It's fine building things all the time and creating new stuff, but also revenue generation is important to a business. So if your churn is less than 10%, I think your product is fine. I would focus on growing it through revenue. If it's higher than 10%, that shows that there's a problem in the functionality of the product. And therefore, I would look at building more user-centric features. So that's just how I would think about what am I going to put on the roadmap. So now let's look at projects. So the first thing with a project is actually not to make a project, it's just to write a document, right, called a project spec. And very important here, I'm actually going to highlight this, but avoid looms, diagrams, and Frankenstein functions. So what I mean by that is literally, I've seen project specs be Figma boards. I've seen them be notes scribbled on the back of paper. It's just confusion. Always try and get whoever's coming up with the project to write out a spec. And that's because writing forces clarity, and also tell them to aim for brevity, because short specs are way more likely to be read. And literally the formula that we've come up with is, in the spec, you just need to answer 3 short questions: why, what, and how. And if I jump over to Linear over here, and I have a look at this project, again, I'm not saying you need to use Linear. It's not an average for them. This is just what we use. On the right-hand side, you'll see this document and you'll see the spec. If you open this up, you'll see there's literally 3 headings: why, what, and how. And this is, again, a real life project that we're working on this week. This is all you need. It does not need to be more complicated than this. And as I was saying, actually, if it's shorter, it's better, because then people are going to actually read it. And I'm not going to read all this for you, but it's simply just why are we building this? What is sort of the vision? What do we expect to get done at the end of it? And then how are we going to take that what and actually turn it into actual work? So essentially, this is, the problem that we're trying to solve. This is the vision for the solution that we have. And then this is taking that vision and turning it into something that we can actually manage. What is the functionality actually going to be? Okay. So that's the projects. I also don't recommend specifying release dates for projects. So start date is fine, but a completion or release date, I don't think you should set, unless there's a hard completion date. So for example, let's say marketing has got a campaign and things have to go live by this date. That's fine. But for the most part, I think that instead you should get a general sense of momentum by reviewing your cycles and your change logs. So if you use something like Linear, what you'll see is at the bottom here by this progress, you can see that it has this graph, and what it's doing is it's measuring the velocity at which you're moving through tasks, and then estimates when it thinks that you're going to complete it. And then that will show on your roadmap. So you can sort of say, well, this project, based on tangible data of the speed at which the team is executing, we think it will be this date, right? And the reason why that's important is Parkinson's law. Work expands to fill the time allowed for its completion, right? This is Parkinson's law. It's been studied and evaluated for a very long time. And so when you set a completion date or a finish date, right, you risk 2 things. If you overestimate the completion date, then you lose productive output. Because if the team can finish it on Tuesday, but you set the completion date to be Friday, I guarantee you it's only going to get finished on Friday. And then you've lost those 3 days of extra productivity that you could have got. But if you underestimate the completion date, then because the team misses the completion date, they end up becoming very discouraged. And so it's sort of a lose-lose. Whereas if the completion date is updating in real time based on velocity of people moving through it, you literally have eliminated both things. Because what happens is the team is always motivated because they're always on time, but also the project gets done in the quickest amount of time possible because there isn't this drag of, we can take our foot off the gas today because it's only due in X amount of time and we're so far ahead, right? So very, very important. I think more teams should adopt that because, it's been a massive lifesaver for us. Okay, then milestones. Probably the most important part about setting up a project. So think of milestones as dominoes, which fall onto each other in sequential order. That's quite important, is dominoes should naturally fall into the next one. So when you complete a milestone, it should naturally lead into the next one. It shouldn't be like you're building one thing and then the next milestone is something completely unrelated and it doesn't connect properly. But also it should be that the milestones have to be done in a specific order, okay? I'm going to show you an example of this. We recommend taking the how of the project and breaking it into chunks of work which represent a percentage of the whole. So remember that spec, we had the how. Once you have the how, what you can then do is break it into chunks. And then we recommend passing each milestone through a mutually exclusive filter. So what that means is when you're doing the milestones, ask yourself, if you were to ship this bundle of work, would it function correctly by itself? Okay, so what I mean by that is if you have a look at these milestones for this project, each one of them, if completed, can work without the other ones. So complete the initial designs, okay? That, if we complete that, we have designs, great. Like it doesn't work, doesn't do anything, but it doesn't require anything else. If we've set up the CMS, again, like it doesn't really require anything else. Once we've built all of the front-end components, we have a working front-end UI product, right? It will work. And then you get into the logic flows that step behind each one. So all of these are mutually exclusive. They're not dependent on any of the previous milestones, but they do naturally flow from one to another. Does that make sense? Okay. And a general rule of thumb that I recommend is a milestone should never represent more than 30% of the total work, but also not less than 10%. So if it's more than 30%, the milestone, in my opinion, is just too beefy. There's just too much work. And then what happens is the milestone takes just way too long to be completed, and then teams get demotivated. But if it's less than 10%, then you're going to end up with way too many milestones, and then you're moving through things too quickly, and it's way more conducive to sort of batch things together. Okay, and what this essentially means is a project can never have more than 10 milestones, because if you have a project with 50 milestones, again, it just becomes very difficult to project manage. Okay, then with the issues, scope issues to be as small as possible. I'm going to go through this super quickly because I want to actually show you this in linear, but essentially try and break things down to the smallest granular detail. And the reason for this is, again, momentum. People like to feel like they're making progress by completing things. So if you have a milestone such as build product, there's so many things that go into that. It's going to take weeks, if not months, to complete that task. Whereas if you break the product into individual screens, people can move through that a lot quicker. Also, issues should communicate tasks. So this is basically just a lesson on being descriptive, right? Say what you mean and, make sure that everyone is on the same page. This is something very important, is everyone should write their own issues, okay? It's way faster and easier for the person doing the work to actually write the tasks for it. And the reason is because if you're a product or a project manager, you might not have the design or the technical skills to be able to do this effectively. And then what ends up happening is the people doing the work gets frustrated because the tasks don't actually align with what's going on, okay? And so the way that we approach this is what I did for this project. Again, let me just give you some context. So we are rebuilding the way that we deliver Seeking Sigma to customers. We're rebuilding our dashboard, right? So this is the issues and these are the milestones. Now, the first two milestones are heavily dependent on me because I'm the product designer. So I'm designing the initial designs. And then because of that, I'm also doing the setup. So I went ahead and I looked at these two milestones and then I created my issues or my tasks for these milestones. So you can see that over here. You can see he has all my tasks and you can see sort of what stage they're in. Then what I did is I spoke to Jack, who's a developer on the project, and I said, hey, I think these 4 milestones are dependent on you. Can you go ahead and create the tasks for them? And you can see he's gone ahead and done that. And you can see that these are his milestones. Now, the reason why that is important is because I don't need to know at a granular level what tasks are getting done. I just need to know if we're achieving milestones. So by him going and making his own issues, it allows him to manage his work, move a lot quicker. It saves me a lot of time on creating all these tasks. And at the end of the day, the result is the same. The milestones get achieved, which means the project gets shipped, which is my responsibility as the project lead. Does that make sense? Okay. And then as you achieve each milestone, you want to write a status update and then just review the issues for the next milestone. This I'm not going to go over here because it's very specific. If you're a designer, maybe just pause and have a look at this because I think you'll find it very useful, because project management for development is quite easy, but for design, it's hard because designs often can take way longer or way less time than you think. And also because you're designing it, it doesn't yet exist. So it's very hard to think about what it's going to be like until you actually have a working prototype. Okay. And then finally, just cycles. So on an N week basis, and again, I've said N week because some companies run on 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I just recommend on a 1 week cycle. What you want to do is you want to essentially jump into your project and you want to review all the issues, and then you want to assign them to cycles. So you can see that all of this is assigned in this cycle, which is the one that we're currently on. And I'm busy smashing my way through that as you go. And that's pretty easy. You can jump into a specific issue. And then over here, you can just select the cycle and it will run from there. And again, I want to say that it doesn't matter what project management software you're using. These are general rules, general philosophy standpoint stuff, not indicative of just using linear. That's what we use, but you can use anything else. All right. So if you are a founder or a non-technical founder, or even just a project lead working in SaaS, I think this should have been very, very useful to you in terms of just a quick and easy way to approach the management of a company that builds products and then going granular into projects, issues, tasks. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video.